Hello, everyone, and welcome again to Liberal White Dudes. I am again Andrew.
Jared.
I'm AJ.
We are Liberal White Dudes. Today we got a big topic, the Green New
Confirmed.
Deal, just like right on the heels of it being released in October of 2018. Um,
Like stay on topic, hot
finally,
trends.
yeah, bringing our coalescing our ideas as far as that goes. Um, But first, in the news, big meeting at the White House on Friday between Michael Flynn, Sidney Powell, who you remember is the craziest of the crazy from the Trump legal team. So crazy, in fact, that the Trump legal team was like, we don't really want to be
Exit,
affiliated
stay,
with those
left.
things that she's saying. And them talking about martial law and yelling and screaming in the Oval Office on Friday. This is nuts.
It's mayhem.
Yeah, I
And
mean, there's
it's
a
Banana
reason.
Republic. It's insanity.
Yeah, there's a reason we have the 25th Amendment. So, um, scholars take a look, lawyers take a look, Mike
Yeah.
Pence take a look. So that's nuts. And that was just Friday. Um, Moving on to our topic for today, the Green New Deal. I'm going to go ahead and start the clock on Jared. You got a minute to tell us how you feel about it. Go.
So I had a couple of thoughts on that. One of the things I think that it's a really good move, top to bottom. Reading through all of their suggestions, I think that uh, the the statistics regarding the necessary moves in terms of the destruction of like the amount of money, the sheer like numbers that they were putting up in the billions and trillions of dollars lost in wreckage and in trying to fix the wreckage afterward was, I mean, absurd.
Yeah.
So they have a ramp down plan to be at zero carbon emissions and greenhouse gas emissions by within, I think, with technological reason or something like that was the verbiage, and by 2050, which I think is a pretty solid strategy, especially given the rate that we're increasing at the moment. Um, I did like that they specified talking to indigenous populations about their uh, using their land for stuff. I think that that's a good move um, in terms of including that
Time's
group of
up.
people. Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
There's
I
my
agree
minute.
with you, including the indigenous people. Of course, we've got now a nominated Secretary of the Interior who is Native American. Um,
Mhm.
AJ, any thoughts on what Jared just said? No clock.
I was preparing for to rapid fire at you. I'm sorry. Let me switch gears here. Uh, I agree as well. I think first and foremost, the irreversible damage uh, can't be ignored at this point. It's just getting a little ridiculous that we even have to say it. At this point, like you said, this deal is like a couple of years. This is not even a deal really, as so much as it is a jumping off point. It's a first step. It's an idea. It's an acknowledgement. We need to acknowledge as a nation, from a bipartisan perspective, we can all agree as intelligent humans that we have to do this, that we're
Yeah, we're
causing
wrecking the
irreversible
planet.
damage. Yeah,
Yeah.
if we can't do that, at least to the degree of at least, and this of course will feed into other issues like flipping the Senate and making sure Biden has the support he needs to even do this. The sad thing is we're not going to convince everyone because, I guess the short answer is greed. Um, you know, acute greed,
Yeah.
just what I can get right now before I die, I guess. No concern for what we're going to look like 20 years from
Yeah.
now, 30 years from now and beyond.
I mean, even
So
this
yeah,
year, we've had more devastating hurricanes and wildfires, and we're seeing the effects already um,
yeah,
of devastating climate change. I will say that I felt the key to the piece of legislation, and one of the reasons, by the way, that we're diving into this is because this is one of the boogeymen, right? This is one of the things that the right drags out all the time. Like, she believes in the Green New Deal. What a lunatic, right? And
right.
none of them have read it. They don't know what it stands for or what it's about.
Yeah.
And really, there's not a lot of specifics in here. It's written like somebody, like if you were in college and they were like, you need to write a 14-page paper, right? I mean, it's like
Right.
there's the letters are huge, the spacing's enormous. It's like they you could probably have
yeah,
gotten this down in 2-3 pages, but I feel like the key to it is it says, whereas because the United States has historically been responsible for a disproportionate amount of greenhouse gas emissions, having emitted 20% of global greenhouse gas emissions through 2014 and has a high technological capacity, the United States must take a leading role in reducing emissions through economic transformation. Which the cliff notes to that is, hey, we do about 20% of the carbon emissions. We are a rich country. We have all kinds of technological advances. Why don't we do better?
agreed.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
do better, period.
So
Yeah.
that's the good part of the Green New Deal, as far as I'm concerned. And there's a lot of parts that are, related to that. And I thought before I read it that the Green New Deal was all about climate change.
Yeah, it's not quite.
That was my
Exclusively,
misconception
yeah.
of the thing. There are a lot of things in here which are just kind of like liberal platform things. Which now I will say that having read this resolution, the number of resolutions that I have read is now a total of 1. But do you think that's pretty standard? I mean, I don't know if it's standard or not to just randomly throw in things that seem to be extremely unrelated.
No, it's not standard. This resolution's definitely broad strokes. Like I said, it's a first step. It's hardly anything right now. The idea behind, I think, the Green New Deal is to get acknowledgement, to get on a page to at least say we have a problem. The reason I think so many of those, it's essentially 2 parts. The first part is basically saying we have a crisis on our hands and we need to do our part to solve it. The second part to the resolution is essentially how we're going to protect people while we transition that. And a lot of other, I guess you could say, liberal ideas feed into how we can do that, because this transition to zero emissions would not be an easy transition. And I think the document acknowledges that.
Yeah, there are parts where it's very specific to that, to the climate change, to the Green New Deal initiative, to the transition. But there are also places where it just seems like why, like it's easy to fire at. You could have a full debate and conversation for days on just 2C, or is it 3C? Yeah, 3C. Where it says a gender earnings gap that results in women earning approximately 80% as much as men at the median. Like, what?
Yeah, it's one of the
it's under wage stagnation
with Republicans that
discussion, which to me is relatively irrelevant. Like, it's an important conversation to have and absolutely a problem, but exacerbated by climate change.
Well, I think this is just my right. I see what you're saying, but like I said, I think because the Green New Deal is these big broad strokes, I think the idea was touching on other issues with our economy that, like you said, may not be directly linked to climate change, but part of transitioning to zero emissions, part of that transition would be transitioning to a change in our economy as well. So why not also make our change for the economy for the better for all Americans? Like it's like if you're going to have to reshape such a large sector of our economy to go to zero emissions in the next 30 years, why would we leave out those marginalized communities?
And there was a couple of things about socialized healthcare towards the end too that I remember reading over.
That,
yeah.
Basically, it's the last piece. They're just like, also Medicare for all. Bye. That's like the last page.
I think the reason for that mainly is one for what AJ said, but also because there's going to be it's basically going to be linked with the social welfare program, right? The people that we are displacing by taking their jobs and turning them into clean energy jobs, they're going to need some sort of social welfare, because it's not just, in my opinion at least, to be taking their jobs, the government seizing their jobs and be like, well, good luck. I disagree with that. I think there should be moves by the government's part. I think that part of that socializing that experience, I think you can work that to your advantage.
Well, in the end, I think it comes down to that we're talking about irreversible damage here. So if we're talking, it's like dominoes. If you're gonna sit here and say we're looking at irreversible damage that we're doing to the planet. And we're going to say that we truly believe that the science behind this, that the only way is to go to zero emissions. Okay, so then how do we get there? Well, then it's going to take doing this kind of transition. And then it's going to take, it's for the greater good, and it's going to be painful, but it's going to take that. And I think that I don't think it's a bad idea to include those ideas as well.
I think it goes back to, episode 2, liberal messaging, which why the idea of climate change is already so hard to get bipartisan agreement on. Why muddy the waters with more, what would be considered leftist issues, which again I don't think should be controversial at all, whether or not people make a living wage or not. It is for whatever reason, but yeah, I don't think putting in there, instead of black lung, maybe you get a good tan installing solar. You know what I mean? Like, there will be jobs for the coal miner, just not mining coal anymore.
Well, I think the part of that though is that there was a bit on this that I read or listened to, and I talked about the fact that the reason that the coal jobs won't be directly linked into the new energy jobs is because they aren't in the same places, right? So it'll be closer to big cities where they need that sort of power and where they can pay for that sort of power and that sort of thing. So the people that are working coal jobs now aren't directly affected by the increase in job production. So I do see that as an issue. I do think there needs to be, I don't know how you fix that, if I'm being perfectly honest.
Well, they still get the reason. I mean, there's creative and there's creative ways for this to spread out, not without government intervention and government help. But that's the whole idea.
Yeah, but I think that's the reason they include the social welfare stuff in there as well. And I do agree that it's not. I do agree that it's a little bit, ham-handed, I think, in its delivery. But I think if you don't push those issues at the same time, you'll get to the point where you can work down coal emissions, but then you'll be held by probably the Republicans on actually helping those people after we take their jobs. I think that's part of it. I think there's a bit of a checkmate there, because if you say, okay, well, we'll do the Green New Deal stuff, but we're not going to financially in any way support these miners or any of the people that are going to be hugely affected by the loss of jobs here, I think you're going to hit a huge issue in terms of continued support for those types of programs.
Yeah.
I feel like...
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
You first.
I was going to say, I agree, Jared. I just feel like maybe the deliveries are not as, smooth as they could have been. And like definitely. You said, and to your point, Andrew, certainly climate change is already bipartisan, or is already polarizing enough. So why pepper in more platforms that just cause more division? I think, again, part of the idea is, it's like you said, Jared, you don't have any answers. The truth is, neither does this resolution yet. This is not about, we have all the answers in these 14 pages. It's about, we need to acknowledge there's a problem. And I think the reason some of those things are peppered in there is because they're trying to answer the questions that they know they're going to get, kind of right off the bat. You know what I mean? Like, the reason they're including those things is because those are going to come up. And so I think, like I said, it's broad strokes. I think they're just trying to cover all their bases in 14 pages, something they think people will hopefully take a little bit of time to read because it's short and acknowledge what's in there.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. Yeah, I guess we're of two minds as far as that goes. I feel like when you say things like, and again, I had big question marks next to healthy food. It's just kind of actually that's in there.
Well, that's actually a good thing. That's actually a good thing to bring up, because I just listened to stuff about this morning. Is that climate change is hugely affected by our food industries.
True story.
Like, hugely affected by our food industries.
Yep.
So I think that's an important thing to mention in terms of your Green New Deal, because a lot of our carbon emissions come from the meat industry, and that's not like an assault on meat as a thing, but it is in a lot of ways.
I think you start assaulting meat as a thing, and you lose a considerable portion of the population.
I agree. I agree with you on that.
Included. I'll eat anything with a face.
See, and I agree with you, but I think that I agree that you miss a lot of those people. But at the same time, when you're talking about climate change and you're talking about global emissions, that's a huge part of it. It's not just swapping out of coal and moving into renewable energy. It's also the way that we treat the planet in terms of its animals and its food. And I think including that in your bill is really important. I think that because I think,
Well,
and
it
yes,
just
you
says
lose out
healthy
on.
food. That doesn't
And
really.
I know it
you
doesn't
can,
specify. Well,
you can do as much
we can.
damage with almonds. I mean, we're talking about the
Broad
almond
strokes,
industry.
Andrew.
But we're
broad
yeah, we can tear down the specificities of the bill. But the thing that's the issue, I think, with that is that it doesn't even talk about the economic means of completing the process. So I do think in a lot of ways it's unfinished. I think that it's not. I think that it's completed in the same way that like the Bill of Rights was, right? Like it has what it wants to do, but it doesn't really specify how those things will be gone about, and those things are ruled on later by courts and by I think it's like a living document in a way.
That one
I
was
think
way
it's
too vague and broad. Second Amendment.
yeah,
Hashtag
no,
Second
I
Amendment.
agree that in a lot of ways it was. I think we've interpreted it wrong in a lot of ways, but I think that but still, I think that sort of document is still important. I think having a outline before you write your essay is an important thing, because we have to have the outline first, right? And there's a lot of people that are like, well, how do we even fix this? And if you can say, hey, we have something, this is it, this is how we fix these things. And I agree that the inclusion of globalized healthcare and is a little or not globalized, but nationalized healthcare is a little bit weird in terms of its relevance to the topic. But I don't think that healthy food period is as much. I think healthy food has a lot of relation there, just because of its carbon emissions.
It has no definition.
I feel like
Sure,
ultimately I do agree with you, Andrew, in that if your goal here is to get Senate Republicans behind the idea that climate change is a factor, why include these other things that they have issues with also?
Yeah, why throw fire?
Kind of,
it's already for some reason a bipartisan issue. I don't understand that at all.
Yeah.
But really, we should be tackling it head on. We're already sitting here too late. Too late to be talking about it. Too late to be tackling it. We just wasted 4 years with this administration pulling out of the Paris Accord, which was just it wasn't anything. I mean, that already wasn't anything. And so now we're doing less than what already was nothing.
We're doing less than nothing somehow. Yeah.
So, I think muddying the waters at all, we've got sort of a tier of things, right? Nobody that's died of COVID this year is worried about climate change. So we definitely have a real, issue there. And then, I mean, how is the earth dying less important than almost anything else on the table?
I think something that's to be said about it is that I wonder what their intention is in terms of negotiation on the bill, right? Like I wonder if
this is just a resolution, right? So it's not a bill.
This is not a bill.
Oh, it's not a bill, right? It's just a resolution. So
not a bill. It's really just a resolution.
Can we all agree on this? And then you give them a lot of points to disagree on.
Right.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. I do see the issue with the inclusion of the global healthcare thing. I do see
in some ways I also feel like it's a statement document also. Like it's one of those, and not to say that I agree with this necessarily. Like I said, Andrew, I think if your ultimate goal is to get people on your side about climate change, that wasn't necessarily the best way to go about it. I think if your goal may really secretly have been to be like, look, we need to get these ideas out there on this resolution, and it's more just about pushing it in that right direction and trying to be uncompromising, I think. But I think in that they missed the mark with that, because we're not really going to make progress if you're including these items that you already know aren't, they're not even going to read past that sentence, so.
Non-starters.
I think that's why you put them at the end.
There's stuff in there though that it's like, care about all people. Republicans aren't going to go for that. Come on, Democrats.
But that's the thing. That's part of it too for me, is that it's so hard, I think, in a lot of ways, to be liberal and politically effective, because in order to be politically effective, you have to compromise on your liberal beliefs a lot, and Republicans don't have to do that as much. It's not really.
They just hold the line.
They don't have to. They just hold the line. They don't have to compromise on anything. They just have to continue to do what they always do.
And they don't have to back it up either. Yeah. We need to provide volumes of fact that they'll refuse to read.
Yes.
They don't need anything.
So being politically efficacious is so hard already.
Yeah.
And I do see why adding that healthcare thing is an issue. But in general, I think that and a lot. It's just so much harder for. I think it's so much harder for you to be that sort of unmoving line. Like, yeah, healthcare. This is our unmoving line,
Right.
because we know that you don't have the votes right now.
Well, it's hard for me because I agree with pretty much everything in this document,
me too.
but I'm not the choir they should be preaching to.
Exactly.
So it's like, look, this is a great deal, but I'm already on your side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
And that was sort of what I was calling out. It's just which seemed to be
Right.
sort of unrelated, guaranteeing a job with a family sustaining wage, adequate family and medical leave, paid vacations, and retirement security to all people of the United States. And I just have a sort of a note: climate change. Like,
yeah, it's unrelated.
Completely
It's-
unrelated.
Well, like,
yeah.
yeah.
And I don't
Well, like I
disagree
said, I
with the
think
idea.
their
but
position is, well, like I said, I think their position is, moving away from fossil fuels entirely and going to zero emissions like I said, it's reshaping the economy. So this is that opportunity to do
And
that.
parts of that,
in that
and
way.
parts of that too, that even that just that statement, parts of that are kind of tied to climate change, right? In terms of their effects
Right.
effects on the people that are currently working in industries that would be hugely affected by a change in our restructuring of our energy industry, right? Those people would be
Right.
affected by that. But I think the generalization and the fact that they stretch it that far, I think that does hurt. I think that does hurt their argument a bit. Yeah.
And then, my last one was the high quality health care. I was like,
Yeah.
providing all people in the United States with high quality health care, affordable, safe, and adequate housing. I mean, just throw in the homelessness problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like this last paragraph of the Green New Deal. I'm like, yeah, I'm for those things.
Right.
Economic security, yeah. And then clean water, clean air, healthy and affordable food, and access to nature, which I'm a little unclear. It says that twice in the document, access to nature. I'm not sure what they mean by that. What? What does that mean? Somebody help me out. Somebody in the chat.
Maybe
I'm
make
not
sure
feigning ignorance. I actually have the ignorance. I don't know.
Yeah,
what they
I think it has to do with just preserving an ecosystem. I think that's kind of what it means. Like, in the sense that, like, instead of having a drought-ridden, down, horrendous, hurricane-ridden ecosystem, we have access to.
Well, maybe they figure if people appreciate nature more, maybe they'll be more interested in preserving.
And
it for
also,
their
actually,
kids.
what they might mean too is that they talked about how going outdoors might be an issue in the future if the climate gets too bad in certain areas, right? So it might be also in reference to that, maintaining our ability to go outside. Someone in the chat says more parks in inner cities, which also might be true. That might be part of it. It's
Yeah.
Access
Is
to
that
nature, more
access
parks
to
in inner
nature and-
cities. All right,
that
I'll buy
that does make sense.
I'm for it.
Yeah. There you go.
For that.
Stamp of
Well,
approval
it's like,
from the
it's
Global
like
White
you
Dudes.
said, Andrew. Like I'm for these things, but again, where's the tie-in here? And like I said, this is just my opinion, but like I said, I think it's tying into the idea that this document is, one, acknowledging we have a crisis on our hands, and two, we need to solve it. And when we solve it, we can solve all these issues too.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Economic restructuring.
Now again,
that
it's
gets
big
fixed in all
ideas.
ways, yeah.
They don't, obviously it doesn't go into specifically how we're going to do that. It's
Yeah.
big ideas that I agree with, but yeah.
When I first dove into the document, it started out by citing the report on global warming and sort of hashing out the problems with that, and even the economic impact, which of course, that you can almost, I feel like, structure this agenda from that standpoint. The amount of money that it is costing big
Right.
insurance companies, any
Right.
number of industries that are traditionally conservative, right?
Yeah.
It's costing you a lot of money.
Yeah.
And while it will cost money to figure it out, in the long run, it'll be less.
Right.
And
That's what I can't understand. In a way I
forget
can.
about
I mean,
the quality of life, and forget about the planet, and forget about all these
Yeah, just
hippie
the
ideals.
pure
Go
just
after it in the
business
planet.
perspective.
Yeah.
Well, when
Yeah.
you're talking about it's very hard for me to wrap my head around someone not understanding when you're talking about trillions and trillions of dollars, millions and millions of lives, and irreversible damage to our planet. I mean,
Yeah.
If you
That
can't
should
get them
be
to
enough. I
agree,
feel like that
It should be enough.
That should be enough, right?
That
It
should
should
be
be,
enough.
but
And they're just kind
it
of like,
isn't.
I don't know. You sound kind of like a hippie.
How else am I supposed to? How else am I supposed to dive into my huge vault like Scrooge McDuck if I'm protecting the planet? That's what I'm
Yeah,
asking.
Yeah.
That's the
Once
hard hitting
again,
question.
You know, makes you have to care about other folks, which they are
Yeah.
not on board.
Yeah.
All right.
Not presently.
As you know, when I adjust myself in my seat, that means we're coming to the end of our segment here. Appreciate everybody who tuned in and came along with us to talk about the Green New Deal. Unfortunately, and this is weird because I had a lot of questions, we were not able to get to AOC
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
tonight. She
sorry,
is
Congresswoman.
still in the
Yeah, we're sorry.
Zoom waiting room. We just plain ran out of time, and I'm sure some of these questions I was asking
Can we-
mid-program, she probably,
Yeah.
I mean, she definitely could have answered.
Yeah,
Maybe given us
definitely could have answered those. Yeah.
a little bit of context there. So
She's actually probably losing it in her seat right now. She's watching.
yeah, she's like, just let me in. I know the answer to this.
I'm right
obviously."
here.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm gonna give 3 out of 5 figs for the Green New Deal.
Hmm.
I'm gonna go
Okay.
4. I'm gonna give it a 4 from me. It's a 4 from me. Weird messaging, but I really like what you got going on. Keep doing that.
That you know what I gotta do? I gotta go 4.5 figs.
Yeah, see,
That's a little bit
almost 5 figs from AJ
Yeah.
tonight. All right, everybody, you should subscribe to our channel on YouTube, and then you should definitely follow us on Twitter, and then head on over to Facebook. Throw us a like.
Yeah.
Give us that like.
Appreciate
all that
everybody
stuff.
tuning in. Thanks again.
Holiday special coming up on Tuesday.
Oh yeah.